Hey guys, welcome to the actual first video story for this channel. This one's called Dinner with Socialites. It is a long, lengthy story. It's about 15 or 16 pages on paper. So I want everybody to be aware of that. There is a trigger warning for gore near the end. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. But also, I want to let you guys know that I'm not going to take out any of the bloopers for this, so you guys are just going to hear me struggle sometimes throughout this entire story, which will make it a little bit more fun. Some of my favorite content creators are people like Lazy Masquerade and Corpse Husband, sorry, Chills, and Most Amazing Top 10, and their videos are just perfect. Like, everything sounds the way that it should, and I'd love to do stuff like that, but I don't always have the patience for it, and I have kids and stuff like that. So let's hop into this first story and see how long it actually takes me to get through it. My name is Alex Linzdora. I'm 17 years old, and I go to a private school for exceptional students in the New York area. My favorite areas of study in school are music and science. I play the cello at concerts around the state, performing classic pieces from Beethoven to Bach. My parents own a huge medical company called Zora Medical. We produce the finest medicine for people all around the world. My parents regularly donate large sums of both money and medicine to less well-off individuals around the country and to third world countries as well. My mom started off as a nurse in a small suburb of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and my dad is a pharmacist in Los Angeles, California. They met at a convention in Denver, Colorado, that discussed the newest ways to diagnose and treat genetic mutations. Sparks flew, and after dating for 2 years, my dad proposed, and shortly thereafter, my parents were married. After moving into a cozy little neighborhood in New York, my parents discovered a gene in jellyfish that could potentially help with Alzheimer's disease. But here we are, 17 years later, with me telling you about the exclusive, invite-only I experienced with my parents. My weeks are usually pretty plain and repetitive: school, concerts, practice, so on and so forth. Just this past week, my mom and dad were discussing going to a dinner that they always go to. They leave early, and I usually have the entire house to myself for the evening and the whole next day. I never understood why dinner could almost take 36 hours. Then again, my parents were always going off to weird places for as long as I could remember. I never got invited, so I decided to ask when my dad brought it up to my mom this time. "Dad, why do I never get to go to these dinners?" I asked the night before they were supposed to leave. "They're just boring dinners. We talk about new developments in medicine and how we can better the care of patients or how to make the side effects easier to deal with. You wouldn't be really interested in all this boring adult talk, would you?" he said casually. "But shouldn't I know who I'll be dealing with when I'm older, when I take over the company and I have to make big decisions like that?" She's not wrong. My mother vouched for me. I know she's not Olivia, but I don't think she's quite ready for these dinners. My mom was quiet, but in agreement with him. She didn't utter another word about dinner. However, she did change the subject on me. "Alex, how do you feel about playing in the Madison Square Garden with the New York Symphony Orchestra next weekend?" I hated being treated like a child, but I really wanted to go to this dinner. I was willing to put up with boring business talk and having to look at numbers and charts that didn't make any sense to me, but I wanted to take the extra initiative to really start learning about my parents' business. Do I have to do the concert? I know it's a huge deal, but I just had my showcase at school last month. I don't really want to, heavily implying my feelings about that. "Don't be like that, Alex," my father scolded me. "We just want you to enjoy your free time as a teenager. You're not going to be 17 forever." "I know I'm not going to be 17 forever, Dad, but I want to be treated like an adult. I get A's in school. I do extra by playing concerts. I've signed up for AP, anatomy, and science in school. I want to come to this dinner. Why do you think I'm not ready? Not to mention, in one breath, you told me to enjoy being a teenager, and the next you asked me to do this big, huge event with New York Symphony. So, what exactly do you want from me?" Frustrated at this point, my dad looked at my mom, and they practically had a telepathic conversation between the two of them while I was right there. "Hello? I'm still here," I said, clearly annoyed. "We'll talk about it," my dad said. "Now please finish your dinner, Alex." Ugh, whatever. I rolled my eyes. I did what I was told. "We'll talk about it" was just as good as no. I knew my parents all too well. I knew that they would be gone before I got home, from school, and I would be alone for the rest of my Friday and the majority, if not all, of Saturday. I finished my dinner and excused myself to my room. I finished homework before I practiced on my cello. I had to decide on a piece for next weekend, though, if I was going to do the event. Did I want to write something original, or did I want to play something already written? I didn't know. So much stress on me. I did scales while I tried to decide, but all I could think about was that damn dinner. Why wasn't I allowed to go? After an hour of playing nothing but scales, I decided I wanted a shower. I got my robe and my hair towel and went to my bathroom. After I got in the bathroom, I saw the tub. It was calling my name. I decided a bath instead of a shower would be so much better. I had a huge clawfoot tub that I hardly ever used, but I just wanted to be enveloped in the warmth of water instead of just having it trickle over me. I let the water run just a touch too hot for comfort, dropped in some jasmine oil, and it was perfect. I put on some classic music and let the water caress my body as I sank into it. The temperature was perfect. I felt all my stress and annoyance with my parents melt away. The oil was great. I loved the smell of jasmine. It was heavenly. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony just came on, and this was the first song that I had ever learned a classic cello part to. It's also my favorite Beethoven song, right behind For Elise. At about 3 minutes into the song, there came a sudden sharp knock on my bathroom door. "Alex," I heard my mom's soft voice behind the door. "May I come in?" I'm kind of, as a last for words. Come to. Hang on, Mom. I reached over and grabbed a spare towel to throw it over the tub, so my mom didn't have to look at me naked. A moment later, I heard the knob turn and my mom slip into the room. "I'm sorry to intrude. Do you want me to come back?" It doesn't matter. You can stay if you want. It's not like you haven't ever seen me naked before, I guess." "I know, but I respect your privacy, Alex. I don't want you to think I'm barging in on you." She shut the door quietly and walked across the room. "Your father and I have talked about the dinner. And these dinners," she hesitated, "are for a person who has an acquired taste for certain things in life. And we just don't think that you're of an appropriate age to be attending. Yet, really, if at all, sweetheart. You act as if I haven't had exotic food." I laughed in her face, but didn't change my expression. I'm not worried about that. But your father and I have thoroughly discussed the fact that we think you just aren't mature enough for the natures of these dinners. Fine. Get out of my room then. I don't want to go anyway." I was furious, almost shrieking. "Well, then, why are you so upset about our decision, Alex? Someone who doesn't want to do something doesn't get upset when they're told no." You really just don't get it, do you? I am so god-awful tired of being left alone here when you guys go for these. Yeah, you guys are here most weekends, and you're here during the week, but are you really here? Sure, you're physically here, but are you really here? You and Dad are always researching the next amazing thing, or I'm studying for my next big test, or I'm practicing for the next concert. We don't spend any quality time together. I just want some attention, for God's sake. I'm so lonely. As the tears welled in my eyes, my mom stood up, stroked my hair. "Finish your bath and come talk to me afterward." I sat in my tub for a long time after the conversation with my mom, so long that my water was actually starting to get cold. I let some of it out and refilled it with hot water. At this point, I decided I could live in the tub. I didn't want to get out and talk to my mom. I didn't really want to do anything at this point. My parents had made up their mind. They weren't going to let me go. I texted my best friend Chi-Chi, asking if she wanted to do something this weekend while my parents were out of town. She responded pretty quickly, too. We had decided that we were going to throw a pizza party at the house. Something small, nothing elaborate for a Friday night, and then she would spend the rest of the weekend with me. After spending approximately 3 hours in the tub, I finally decided it was time to get out. My toes looked like prunes. I heavily debated whether I wanted to talk to my mom or not. I was just going to get lectured about how immature my behavior was. I drained the tub, wrapped myself up in the robe, and picked out my clothes for the next day. The thought of talking to Mom lingered and ultimately I decided that I need to, whether I was going to get lectured or not. I got into my pajamas and headed to my mom and dad's room. Neither were there, so I checked my dad's study, where I saw him. "Hey, Dad, have you seen Mom by chance?" "I do believe she's on the patio," he said, peering up from his tabloid. "Thanks, Dad." He raised up his glass of whiskey and returned to reading. I brewed a cup of tea for my mom and myself before I headed out and found her on the patio, taking in the night air. I slid open the door. "Hey, Mom, I've got you a cup of tea." She grabbed her cup and invited me to sit with her. I closed the door, took up her invitation. "Alex, I understand, yes, that you are getting older and that you wanted to be treated more like an adult, but you still exhibit childlike attributes when you don't get what you want. That is your father's and my fault, as you have always gotten what you wanted and always the best of the best." She talked calmly to me before taking a sip of her tea. I sat silently, just listening, while sipping from my own cup of tea. "You have a lot of growing up to do, young lady, but your father and I have discussed that we will bring you to one dinner. It can't be this one because we've already made the reservations for just your father and I. However, we have put your name on the roster for next month attendees." She looked up from her cup of tea almost sullenly, like she finally realized I was growing up and that I would be doing this eventually anyway. "But don't get your hopes up, young lady. This is your only one until you're 18. Who knows? You may not want to attend any more after this one." A surge of excitement raced through my body, but I had to contain it. I had to act mature about it. Rising from my seat, I gave my mom a hug and I thanked her in my calmest voice. I finished my cup of tea on the way to the kitchen and rinsed the cup. Once out of sight from my mother, I ran excitedly to my room. I picked up my phone and called Chi-Chi, immediately needing to tell somebody. We talked for about an hour. Why this was the only one I could attend until I was 18, and the really sullen look on my mom's face when she told me I could go. I guessed because I was just going to be bored out of my skull and probably be on my phone halfway through the meeting that would follow dinner. We finally called it a night at about 10:30. As expected, when Chi-Chi and I got to my house, my parents were nowhere to be seen or found. However, I did see a note on the counter that my dad left me. "Saw you were in a better mood when you left for school this morning. Glad to see we could all come to an agreement. Leaving my card with you for your house party tonight. Make sure you and Chi-Chi go to the tailor tomorrow and pick out a dress for MSG. Love you, Mom and Dad." Evening. "Guess we're going to town tomorrow, Chi-Chi. Dad left me the Amex for food tonight and a new dress for my upcoming concert," I said, flashing my dad's card. "So what are we feeding our friends from school?" she asked as we headed toward my room to unpack her bag for the weekend and pick out clothes for the evening. "Well, seeing as that I can't cook, and neither can you, and the chef is off for the weekend because Mom and Dad are out of town, I think I want pizza." We haven't had a pizza party in a long time. Domino's or Pizza Hut?" "No one out pizzas the Hut, baby," she said in her best TV voice. We both busted out laughing. I called in the order. I warned the lady taking my order, saying it was going to be a big one. She reassured me it wouldn't be an issue. I ordered 3 pepperoni, 3 sausage, 3 cheese, 3 pepperoni and sausage, and 3 chicken and spinach orders. I got 5 orders of both regular and cheesy breadsticks, 4 orders of boneless wings with all the sauces on the side, plus 2 liters of Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and Dr. Pepper. When it was all said and done, she repeated my order. I confirmed. She sounded hesitant, asking me if it was a joke. I reassured her it was not. My total came out to about $300. I paid the lady and told her the order was no rush, but it should be here around 8, giving them ample time. I gave her the address. She repeated. I confirmed. "Awful long conversation. Was she having a hard time keeping up?" Chi-Chi asked. "No, she thought it was a joke." I rolled my eyes. Like, why would I call in a big order as a joke? I mean, I guess someone probably has at some point. While I showered, Chi-Chi answered my phone. When I finished, I asked her, "Do you need one before the party?" "Yeah, I smell like gym class." Chi-Chi jumped in, and I answered her texts before grabbing her a towel and throwing her clothes in the laundry. After showering, we picked out outfits, and we settled on casual jeans, tank tops, and vests. I wore my hair down, but Chi-Chi wanted her hair up. People started arriving at about 7:30. I invited them in, and we started up the music. I answered the door, and pizza was here 15 minutes early. The driver was standing with items stacked so high I didn't know how he made it to the door. I took half the stack and led him to where I would set the stuff out. He helped me organize anything before he said, "There's more in the car, ma'am." I followed him out to his car and grabbed the last of it myself. I tipped him a 50. "Have a great night. Drive safely." I returned to the house and got on with the night. People were already digging into the food by the time I got back with the drinks in tow. The night went over pretty smoothly. I couldn't have asked for a better party. There were a couple tussles because a few people decided to sneak in booze, which I personally don't approve of. I escorted them to the door myself and told them, "Don't bother coming back." Additionally, I found a few lovers meandering around the house in places they really didn't belong, like my dad's study and a few other rooms that literally no one was allowed in. As I went to his desk to straighten it out, I noticed that my dad had forgotten to throw out the trash. It was the tabloid from the night before. I read the front page. "Killers still on loose. No leads on the hitchhikers found along major highways in the greater Midwest area. Police believe more than one killer to be responsible." I decided to call an end to the party at midnight. There were a few moans and groans, but more thank yous than anything. Chi-Chi helped me to get people out, trying to force them to take pizza and appetizers with them. We kept a cheese pizza for ourselves to snack on. By 12:30, everyone was gone, and the house was quiet. I yawned and stretched, ready for bed. I'm going upstairs to take off my makeup and get ready for bed. "Are you coming with me?" I asked. We went upstairs and took off our makeup, put on pajamas, then laid in my bed and answered text messages for all of 15 minutes before both of us were asleep. The following morning, I woke up around 9, showered, and got on my stylish sweatsuit and threw my hair up in a messy bun. I went downstairs to make myself eggs. Halfway through, Chi-Chi came down looking like something from another world. Her tank top hung off her shoulder, her pants drooped, and she had huge black bags under her eyes. "You okay, girl? You don't look so good." "I feel like death," she managed to croak out. Her voice was dry and cracked. She sounded so hoarse. I made her a cup of jasmine and honey tea to help with the dryness. "You still gonna come dress shopping with me? I was planning on taking the Benz." I held up and jingled the keys. She sat at the breakfast bar with me, her knees to her chest. She sipped on tea, nodding her head. "It'll pass." "You didn't let anyone get your drinks last night, did you? You got them all yourself, right?" I asked, really concerned. "Yeah, I think so. I only set my drink down a few times," she coughed. "Might just be a bug you got from someone else." I shrugged it off. It was only a cold, or a sore throat. I almost hoped I'd catch it so I didn't have to do this damn concert. Chi-Chi had a bowl of oatmeal and got herself together. We essentially matched. As the day went on, her voice returned to normal. We visited the tailor for a new dress, and I tried on a dozen of them. Some I liked, others were horrendous. One of my favorites, though, consisted of a navy blue halter top with a knee-high slit up the side. Another was red, long-sleeved, fitted waist, floor-length dress. I also liked a black knee-length spaghetti strap. I couldn't decide, so I had to put all of them on hold until my mom could help me decide. We returned to the house after a quick bite to eat after Olive Garden and just lounged around the house. Saturdays were amazing. They are a day of no commitments and laziness. Chi-Chi and I binge-watched Vampire Diaries and ate up the drama. I decided to get a jump start on my homework at about 6, and I finished my math and most of my history. I would do my English tomorrow, though. Easy stuff. Just an essay, rough draft I would bang out in under an hour. I already had my outline done. All I had to do was get the rough details out on paper. Sunday came, and Chi-Chi went home. My parents got home at about 1. I was in my room when they pulled in. I met them downstairs. We exchanged formalities, and I returned to my room. I wouldn't emerge until dinner time or until I finished my homework, whichever came first. Fast forward 1 month. I heard my parents talking hurriedly about the next dinner. Wilt standing outside my father's study. Olivia, I just don't think she's ready for all of this. Dewey, as much as I agree with you, she's already on the registry, and I think she needs to see what it's all about. I heard my dad pacing in his voice. What if she says something to someone? My mother scoffed. What's she gonna say? You and I had no idea what we were getting into when we signed up for our first dinner. And we were thoroughly mortified, Liv. My dad stopped pacing and grabbed my mom by the shoulder, shaking her a little bit. I still think she's just too young. I stepped back and thought to myself, they were mortified? They went to dinner. What could be so mortifying about dinner? Unless there was way more to it than they were letting on. I guess that would explain the secrecy. Ultimately, it would. Returning to my room, I sat and contemplated wanting to go. Listening to that conversation made me a bit sick to my stomach. What were my parents mortified by? Dinner rolled around, and I sat at the table like we did every night. Mom and Dad asked about school or anything else that I had going on, and I gave super short, curt answers. I didn't want to focus on what they were talking about. I couldn't wrap my head around what they could be mortified about at a dinner. Were they talking about the results of clinical trials and the adverse effect of drugs that they were helping develop? Maybe. I suppose some of the things that can happen during trials can be pretty gross, to say the least. You're awful quiet, young lady, my mom interrupted my train of thought. Sorry, just thinking about what I should play at the concert you guys have propositioned me with. Any ideas so far? My dad questioned. I was pondering maybe a Haydn piece, maybe Brahms, I idly commented, twirling my spaghetti with my fork. Alex, are you okay? You've hardly touched your dinner, my mom commented, feeling my forehead. Yeah, I'm okay. May I be excused from the table? Mom nodded. I got up, cleaning my plate off into the garbage, and headed toward my room. She came in after a short while to find me in my pajamas, painting my toenails on my bed. She stood in my door and said, Dinner is tomorrow, Alex. Are you sure you want to give up your weekend? I actually feel a little bit sick. I don't know. She came over and felt my forehead again. You don't feel warm, darling. I bet it's just nerves. You get like this before your concerts, too. She kissed my forehead and said, Get some rest, my darling. I will as soon as my nails dry. And you're probably right, Mom. It's just nerves. I will pick you up tomorrow from school after lunch. Well, I got my wish. I was finally going to one of these weird dinners with my parents, and I had no idea what I was in for. I tossed and turned all night. My dreams were vivid, but I couldn't remember any of them the following morning. Fast forward. It was fourth period, and I watched the minutes tick by on the clock. It's almost lunch, which means Mom will be here to pick me up soon. I tried concentrating on my school lesson, but I just couldn't. The whole period flew by almost too quickly. I dragged myself out to my locker, had a quick chat with Chi-Chi about my nerves. She reassured me about everything. I packed my book bag with homework I already had and went to the rooms of my next 3 classes to collect my homework and study guides for missed class time. This was so unusual. I never missed school. Ever. My cell started buzzing. Mom was calling. I answered. Hello? She was outside. She was here to get me. I finished grabbing everything I needed and walked out to meet her. Mom was dressed casually in jeans and a white t-shirt, while I was still in my school uniform. We'll go home to get new clothes, and then we have to go to the airport. Your dad is waiting for us there. You guys fly out of town for these dinners? I was shocked. What else are you not telling me? Mom was silent until we got home. Packed something formal and packed something to wear home on Saturday. Okay, I said, not arguing. I rushed up to my room and packed my concert gown. A white and gold trim floor-length dress with an open back and a low V-neck front, but with lace covering all the way down. I grabbed my workout outfit for the ultimate comfort experience for the flight home. I put on capris and a tank top with a light sweater and went downstairs. I'm ready to go, Mom. Okay, let's go then. Mom and I got in the car and she drove us to the airport where his dad was standing next to a jet. He reached out his hand. My mother placed her hand in his. He gently clasped and kissed the back of her hand. Hello, beautiful. When Dad saw me, he did the same but greeted me with, hello, my sweet girl. I blushed a little and said, hello, Daddy. I hugged him and he motioned Mom and me up the stairs to board the jet. Alex, I need you to be on your absolute best behavior tonight, Dad said once we were up in the air. Have I ever made a fool of any of us, Dad? I asked, kind of irritated with the remark. No, but you have to understand this is a private event, an adult kind of thing. You'll be experiencing something no teenager ever will, he said, slicking back his hair. I always liked the way my dad looked with his hair slicked back and the way that it shined. It was comparable to Gomez Adams. My dad was a real sharp-looking guy, and I hope my husband looks that good when I get married. I understand, Dad. Say no more. Besides, this is just dinner and talking about the company stuff and stuff like that. I'll be so good you won't even know I'm there. I put my hand up to express as if he didn't need to say any more. Okay, good, but this isn't your just average run-of-the-mill dinner like I think you're expecting, Alex. You should prepare for the unexpected. Some wild things happen at these dinners. He then left to go to a private room. You should go change into your dinnerware, darling, my mother followed and said closely behind my dad after motioning to a room on the other side of the plane. At this point, I was a little more than perplexed. My stomach was starting to turn violently. I entered my private changing room and threw up a couple of times. Well, there goes my lunch, I thought to myself. I changed into my dress and did my makeup, but I left my hair down. I always liked to do a similar updo to my mom, so I usually let my mom do my hair for formal events. I was back in the main area of the plane before my parents were, but I didn't wait long before they had joined me. Mom, can you do my hair, please? Certainly. What would you like me to do? She asked while placing the last of her bobby pins into her updo. Alex, you look a little pale. Are you okay? I don't think my nerves have quite settled yet. I threw up in the bathroom. Will you do my hair into a French twist? I asked, handing her a brush. Here, take this. It should help with the sickness. She handed me a small red pill for my nausea. She got my hair up and pinned it down and then finished off the look with some hairspray to contain my few flyaway hairs. It wasn't more than another 15 minutes and we were landing. What city are we in? I asked. My parents looked at each other, but my dad spoke. We usually just get on and off the plane. The cities and locations are kept secret. Now, when we get out of the car, there's going to be some men with blindfolds. Just put it on and let them guide you to the car. Okay, I said, confused. Is this like a cult meeting or something? Because this is definitely not how business dinners go. I looked at my dad, and when he didn't respond, I looked to my mom. I didn't get a response from either of them. I'm scared. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to stay on the plane. You wanted to do this, so now you're doing this, Alex. My dad was very matter-of-fact. I nodded and sat quietly. The door to the plane opened, and we walked out together, where two men handed out blindfolds to me, Mom, and Dad. I put it on without question and held my mother's hand, who was led by one of the men. Watch your step into the car, miss, one of the guards said softly as he guided me into the car. We drove for what seemed like forever blindfolded. I held tightly to my mother's hand. I felt her lean over. Don't be nervous, darling. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. The car stopped, and I felt someone grabbing onto my blindfold. I let them pull it off, and it was my dad. I saw him holding all three. Get out and follow me, he told me. I opened the door and stepped out, waiting by the door for my parents to exit the vehicle as well. My dad walked nonchalantly to the building nearest to us. Mom and I followed. We entered, and my parents were warmly greeted by both men and women, all dressed nicely, just like we were. My dad introduced me to a few people. All of their names I forgot. One gentleman stood out particularly, though. He reminded me of Jeremy Clarkson because of the way that he looked and talked, except this guy was about 6 inches shorter than me. He introduced himself as Mr. Stanley. He chatted with my dad for a minute and then left. Everyone was older than me, and there wasn't anyone there around my age, so I was very quickly disinterested with the people my parents were talking to. They all just talked about their lives, their families at home, what the kids were doing, all normal things. I heard one gentleman, who mentioned he was a police officer in Chicago, ask my dad if he was ready for the event tonight. Then mentioned that our hospital is where all of his officers go for treatment. They didn't talk about my dad's new research project or anything of real importance, in my opinion. Maybe this was just a big gathering of stupidly rich people. There were no charts of progress or anything. I started to question if this was a business dinner again, or if it was just a dress fancy but be casual dinner. Mr. Stanley found me minding my own business. I was sitting in a corner, away from the other patrons. "Hello, young lady," he extended his hand. I reached out to shake his hand. He helped me to a standing position. "Hello, Mr. Stanley. Quite the business dinner my parents have invited me to attend." "Oh, is that what they told you this was? While there is dinner, there's also entertainment I do hope you enjoy," he divulged in a rather sultry voice. My face twitched, my upper lip raising slightly at the way that he spoke to me. I'm sure that whatever it is, I'm more than able to handle. I don't see anyone else my age here, though. "You must be close-knit with Mom and Dad. They trust you with the entertainment. Secrecy is the utmost of importance tonight. It is of a rather graphic nature," he insinuated. "Oh, absolutely. I understand that." I scanned the room for my parents. "Secrecy seems to be a big theme in my house lately," I mentioned, a little bit disgruntled. "It was a pleasure speaking with you, Miss Zora, but I bid you goodbye for now. I will chat with you after the show." He bowed slightly and kissed the back of my hand. An announcement was made that dinner was about to be served, and we all sat around a giant rectangular table. It fit everyone. Mind you, there were at least 50 people or more present. We sat down and had a wonderful dinner of our choosing. They had chefs on hand for everything we might want. I chose salmon sashimi with fried rice, and my dad even let me have a glass of wine with my mother. They were usually so strict about drinking alcohol around me that I had just adopted a no alcohol rule for my parties. I knew my dad had an occasional glass, but I had never seen my mom with a drink in her hand. My nerves finally settled, and I couldn't believe I was so nervous. It was literally a dinner where everyone just talked about their lives and what was going on. Why do we have to get so fancy for it? I laughed at myself for being so foolish. I really wasn't missing anything at home. The waiters came around, removed our plates and our drinks. Mr. Stanley was at the head of the table. He stood and gently tapped his knife against the glass to grab everyone's attention. "I'd like to make a toast to all of you wonderful people and all the wonderful things you do for this country. From the head of the medical communities who provide excellent medicine and care to the people of this country, to the fine men and women of the police enforcement who protect us in our times of need. Thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Zora, who found this month's venue. It's quite roomy, if I do say so myself," he said cheerfully, and clinked the glasses with the person to his left, who clanked his glass with the woman next to him, and it went all the way around the table, right back to him. "Is everyone ready for tonight's entertainment? She is quite beautiful. I hope she's as feisty as I've been promised," he said, raising his glass. Simultaneously, as if on cue, everyone lifted their glasses and cheered. From the corner of the room emerged 4 men, carrying a long, narrow box on their shoulders. "Mom, who's in there?" I asked, tapping on her shoulder. "The entertainment," she said to me in a callous voice. The man at the end of the table closest to Mr. Stanley's left got up from his seat, moved his chair, and allowed the men to climb on the table and gently set down the box. I could see a lock on the side that faced us. Mr. Stanley tossed one of the men a set of keys, which he unlocked the box and opened it. He knelt and reached into the box. from where he picked up a girl from inside. She was naked, bound, and blindfolded. She wasn't moving, though. They strapped her legs down and her arms above her head. I nudged my mom. What's going on? My stomach did a complete 180. My nerves were definitely returning. She shushed me. Another one of the men closed the top of the box, allowing the girl to be set down atop. I watched in anticipation. I was starting to sweat. I took a sip of wine to try and calm my nerves. That seemed to do it. I watched intently as the man who carried the box walked off the table and out of the room. Mr. Stanley stood and got himself on the table. He reached into his suit and from a hidden pocket to pull out a sheath of some sort and unrolled it next to the girl. He looked around the table and his eyes locked directly onto mine. "Would you like to do the honors, young lady?" I looked at my mom, but she didn't say a word to me. "What are the honors?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Well, you get to make the first cut, of course. This is your initiation," he said cheerily and laughing. The whole room erupted in laughter afterward. He reached down and grabbed my hand, pulled me up onto the table, and guided me over where I saw a sheath. Within the sheath was a butcher's kit. It had every knife one would need to completely skin, cut, and quarter an animal. I stood there, completely frozen. "First time's nerves, darling? That's okay. Go sit back down." He patted me on the shoulder as if trying to encourage me. It happens to the best of us. I couldn't complete my initiation my first dinner either. I looked around the room as people silently judged me, sipping on their drinks. A gentleman stood up and said my wife would like to make the first cut. It felt like my chair was a million miles away from where I stood, and I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't move. My dad had to get up onto the table, walk to me, and physically sit me back down in my chair. I swallowed hard as I watched the guy's wife get up on the table and carefully select her knife. She chose a long, slim knife. It was a fillet knife. I recognized it from when we get fresh fish and Dad fillets them at home. She glided the knife along the girl's upper arm, who was still not moving. But as soon as the lady got to her elbow, she pushed harder and the knife sliced through her skin like butter, all the way down her forearm. The girl jolted awake and screamed in pain. She looked around confused and tried to get up, but her ankles were bound together. "Oh, that was exhilarating," said the lady who had just cut into. She went in for another cut, and this time got the girl's upper arm. I looked to my parents, absolutely mortified. They were supposed to help people. I heard a gurgling, choking sound, and some guy was holding this poor girl down by her neck. He was saying something to her, but I was too scared with what I was seeing to listen. I got up from the table and found the ladies' room. On the way there, my mouth started to water. I got dizzy and almost lost my balance walking. I opened the nearest stall and vomited into the toilet. I couldn't believe what I was saying. I heard the door open and my mother enter. "Alex? Go away," I shouted. "You're supposed to help people, Mom." I screamed. I threw up again. "Alex, get yourself together and get back out to the table." She hissed at me. I wiped my mouth and just stared at her. "No. Get out there now," she said, not changing her tone of voice. "Or what? You'll let them do that to me? Do not embarrass your father and I, and get out there. You have 5 minutes to get your act together." And with that, she left. From the bathroom, I heard the girl screaming in agony, but I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't go back out there. Would my parents really let them do that to me? I exited the bathroom and put my bravest face on I could. I sat next to my mother and watched in horror as more people got up and mutilated this poor girl's body. There were so many cuts on her body now. Her whole body red with blood. Her body shook from shock and the unbearable pain she was in. her breathing. I watched as a man in a white suit with shaggy red hair approached her. I couldn't see what he held, but I did hear her cry out in the worst way I had heard so far. I watched her fingertips fall off, one by one, into the pool of blood amassing around her. Soon there was enough of it on the table that it was running off and onto the remaining people sitting in their seats and watching. A tall, slender, and quite handsome fellow got up, carefully selected a knife, and Sushi screamed and jerked violently while he held up a chunk of meat. She rolled off the box, her hand still above her head, and one of her calves was missing. That sicko filleted off her. I watched as a couple across the table from me took blood into their hands and lathered it onto themselves and each other. They kissed each other quite romantically. It would have fit right into a late night scene movie on HBO. This wasn't an uncommon scene around the table, as I was noticing more and more couples. I looked to my father and he kissed my mother's hands. They smiled at each other. My dad looked to me. You don't seem all that grown up to me now, Alex. It's not an I told you so moment, but next time we tell you no, I suggest you take the hint. I could feel my stomach turning again, but I didn't want to vomit. Not out here in front of everyone my parents knew. I swallowed it. Everyone, including my parents, had gone up and cut or mutilated this girl in some way. I just wanted to go up there and cut her throat so it could be over for her. And before I knew it, that's exactly what I had done. 1 second, I was sitting in my chair, and the next thing I knew, I was standing over her with a knife in my hand, and her throat was cut open. Her head, heavy in my hand, the crimson liquid flowing over my hand and through my fingers from her hair, staining my evening gown. Thank you, she mouthed to me. She gurgled as the liquid filled her lungs, and the last of her life had left her body, and she felt completely limp in my arms. I felt sick to my stomach knowing that I just had to end this poor girl's life, but it was better than watching her suffer like that. I knew it was the right thing to do. I dropped the knife by my side, my face pressed up against hers, tears pooling in my eyes as I felt her last tear collect with mine between our cheeks. An alarm went off in the building, and I felt warm water washing all the blood away. Everyone cheered and clapped and was elated. I leaned my head back and soaked up the warm water, feeling it cleanse all the bad that I had just witnessed. I wiped the water from my face and opened them, only to realize it wasn't water raining down on me. It was blood. Warm, fresh blood. I got up as fast as I could to make a break for the door to the outside. I was almost there when I was stopped by one of the men who carried in the girl. He tried to grab me, but I bolted in the other direction. Clumsily, I slipped on the floor and fell. I hit my head. When I woke, I was at home, in my bed. Oh God, it was just a bad dream, I thought to myself. I looked around my room and saw my dress hanging, freshly dry cleaned. That was odd. I don't remember taking it out before bed last night. I swung out of bed, and when I went to stand, I immediately fell. I hit the floor and screamed in pain. My mother rushed into my room and helped me back into bed. Honey, you sprained your ankle last night. Relax. What do you need? I wrapped my arms around her and cried, Mom, I had the worst dream ever. She hugged me tightly while she patted my head. What about, darling? I had a dream that you and Dad took me to a dinner where people were cutting up this poor girl and her body was completely mutilated, and I had to kill her to end her misery. You and Dad were involved, and it was just terrible. I sobbed into my mother's shoulder. She let me calm down and rubbed my forehead. Just relax, my darling. We would never. I knew my parents could never do something like that. My parents were good people. They didn't torture people. My parents were medical professionals. They took a vow to help and cure people. I finally relaxed back onto my pillow and turned on my TV. I was flipping through the channels when I saw a familiar face on the news channel. I stopped and saw the girl from my dream. My supposed dream. I saw the girl from last night. She was found on the side of US 2 in the middle of Minnesota, and she was the fifth hitchhiker turn up terribly mutilated.